not people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags.
There it is.
That's a nice intro.
You like that? You like that?
Yeah.
I catch people dancing to it every time I play it. I'm looking down here and I catch people dancing to it. It's a Tom McDonald song, man. It is absolutely perfect for the show and many other shows like it.
What's the name of it?
It's called American Flags.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an awesome. I think maybe you get Trump's ear, you can tell him he could probably use it for his campaign. So we got a lot to talk about. First off, there's the clip of you in the hallway with Hunter, and
the one that went viral is the short clip because Faux News, Paul Ryan basically is on the board of that bad boy. So Faux News picked it up, and some of your Con Inc., mainstream lemmings, I like to call them, pumped that out. And so that's when kind of the mainstream conservative Twitter started picking up on it. I mean, I think it easily went over 10 million, I think, in the collective.
I didn't know it was you. So I was interviewing Nate Kane. I saw the clip. Everyone saw the clip.
It's unfortunate because I usually come up to folks and say, hey, Ivan Raiklin, the Deepstate Marauder, and then go into my questions. And that was the one instance that I didn't because
I can see you in the back.
Yeah, so did you see the longer form video that I just sent you? I think if you play the short one first and then play the longer one so you can kind of see, what I did was chop it up. There were 3 different angles. One was mine, the other one was Faux News, and the other one, the C-SPAN camera, was first on Hunter and his attorney, and then when I started my line of questioning, the cameraman moved over to get me and Hunter in the shot because I think he probably knew, he probably recognized me. He was like, "Oh, Ivan's probably going to be the story." So,
so let's go ahead and take a look at that clip real quick.
Yeah,
here it is.
They're more interested in political theater, which is what we have going on right here. Thanks.
Political theater, kind of like you and Benny Thompson do, by sending memos to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary to beef up the Quiet Skies program, Mr. Goldman. Can you address that? Is that due process to put folks without legal predicate on a Fourth Amendment rape program known as the Quiet Skies program against your political opponents? There's going to be a massive boomerang, sir, and you're going to be one of the targets of that boomerang. It's coming.
Wrong clip, but one hell of a clip. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, that was a wrong clip, but yeah, we have to set the context before we play that clip because
go ahead, because we'll replay it. So
here's where we're at. If you can go back, because that way this one was from today. I think we need to close out with the impeachment stuff. So the sequencing is not quite there. If we play that, talk about it.
Well, I got 2 clips that you sent me, and I was looking for the Hunter clip, and I assumed it was the smaller of the 2 clips.
2 minutes.
Okay, here it is. Let's play it real quick.
Has the COVID jab mandate negatively affected the military's readiness?
There are a number of ways it seems it's impacted negatively our readiness. I'm not the expert on that issue, however. It's not what I wrote a book about. In fact, the mandates were rolling out at the time I separated from active duty, but got good friends and colleagues who would be perfect to testify about that issue.
So sadly, the DOD has refused to reinstate the thousands of service members kicked out of the military for rejecting the experimental COVID shot. Would reinstatement of these service members?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's not the right clip either.
Well, it's possible that it could, Congressman. The question.
Apologize, but those are both of the clips that I had here. But I can just as easily pull it up over here. So, yeah, just give me a second and I'll grab it for you. But here we go. Here's the longer version of the clip right here. And I'm gonna throw it on the screen so you can see it.
Okay.
Be careful of the officers. Be respectful. Hunter Biden was a private citizen.
When Mr. Crane started speaking.
Despite this, Republicans
Are you afraid?
sought to use, would you please, I'll answer your question if you be quiet and let me make a statement.
What kind of crack do you normally smoke, Mr. Biden?
Let me start again. Hunter Biden was and is a private citizen. Despite this, Republicans
I don't know
sought to
why you
use
got the
it as a
wrong
surrogate to attack his
But I can see you creeping up in the back there. And
no, none of those are the right ones. So
yeah, but
yeah,
yes,
let me send you the right one.
if you do that, I'll cue it up.
Yeah, none of those are the right one. I don't know why.
I was talking with Nate Kane on our interview the other night. He was the one who told me, he said, did you hear that? You know, the guy yelling out, Hunter, you know, what kind of crack do you smoke? What's your favorite kind of crack? He's like, that was Ivan. Oh, dude, that's classic. That's classic.
All right, I just DM'd you.
All right, I'm looking for it. There it is. The one where you're doing like this with his head here, Ivan?
Yep.
Sure, let me grab this one.
So before you press, just tell me when you're ready, and then don't press play yet so I can tee it up.
Sure.
All right, so last week, Hunter Biden was going to be facing contempt vote in Congress in the Oversight Committee. The chairman's Jim Comer. And they were just going to go and essentially talk about it and then vote to hold him in contempt. Well, a little crack baby walked into the room. Now, I was not in the room when he walked in because I was talking to another member of Congress in the Judiciary Committee room. And then after I completed that conversation, started to walk over to the Oversight Committee room, which is basically the next room over in the Rayburn building. And as I walk in to sit down, Nicole Reffitt, I don't know if you know who that is, Guy Reffitt's wife. He's one of the J6 political hostages. And then Mickey Whithoff, who is Ashley Babbitt's mother.
I know her.
We had agreed we're going to attend this hearing, but I was just kind of wrapping things up in another hearing. Again, like I said, with another member of Congress to make sure that they're tracking on a couple of issues. And then I walk in and she tells me, hey, Hunter Biden's in the room. And I'm like, well, where? So I'm looking around, why? Because it wasn't planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I look around and she says, right in front of you. So I literally popped up my live stream on StreamYard and started recording everything as it played out. And what you're about to see are the highlights of that live stream where you're seeing my perspective initially. And then as he runs out of the hearing room when Marjorie Taylor Greene is about to speak, I follow him out the hallway. And when they were planning on doing a press conference with his attorney, Abby Lowell, Hunter Biden, that is, it didn't really go as planned, according to them, because they didn't factor in me. And you're going to see that clearly taking place. And a lot of people only saw the first question that I asked about, you have to listen, what kind of crack do you smoke?
Sure.
But there are many more questions that I asked him, so go ahead and play it.
Here we go.
You ready? Let's go! Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, this is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
Please, I'll answer your question if you be quiet and let me make a statement.
What kind
Okay?
of crack do you normally smoke, Mr. Biden? What style of crack pipes do you use, Mr. Biden? Who's your crack supplier, Mr. Biden? What are you going to do when the House Sergeant at Arms deputizes some folks to conduct a live stream raid similar to what was done to Roger Stone as they raid you to compel you to testify before Congress, Mr. Biden? Can you answer that, please? Sir, are you still receiving money from China and Ukraine, Mr. Biden? Sir? What other nations? Romania? How close are you with Jeffrey Epstein, Mr. Biden?
Now everybody giving them guest spots and stocks through the roof. 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name. 8 years in the making, patiently waiting to blow that's taking over the globe. He's got a partner in crime, it's equally dope. You won't believe that comes out of this kid's throat. He's not your everyday on the block. He knows how to work with what he's got, making his way to the top. He often gets a comment on his name. People keep asking him, was it given that birth that doesn't stand for an acronym? No, he's living proof. Let him rock in the booth. Him and his crew are known around as one of the best, dedicated to what they do and give 100%. Forget Mike, nobody really knows how or why he works so hard. It seems like he's never got time because he writes every note and he writes every line. And I've seen him at work when that light goes on in his mind. It's like a design is written in his head every time before he even touches a key or speaks in a rhyme. And knows he runs with the kids that he signed. Ridiculous, without even trying. How do they do this? It's 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100%.
Awesome. And I saw Ashley Babbitt's mom in the beginning of that clip sitting there.
He really enjoyed it as he fled the scene. Now, here's the problem. I mean, there's other parts of that you didn't see later on where I followed him in the hallway. And I basically said, hey, Speaker Johnson, you have the inherent authority to look over to your Sergeant at Arms, Bill McFarland, and say, hey, Bill, you see this contempt? If they vote on the contempt, guess what? He can order the House Sergeant at Arms to conduct a live stream swatting raid of Hunter Biden in order to enforce that. Now, for those people that are like, oh, well, hopium, this and that, disinformation. Well, let's take a look here. Why don't we go and look at I don't know. If you go into your DMs and go up and scroll up a little bit, there's a document with a highlighted portion. I'm going to read the highlighted excerpt. If you still don't believe me, why don't you just go ahead and click on the link, govinfo.gov, and that link links you to none other than a document that was supposed to be voted on this week, but because we have toxic, feckless, stone-cold cowards, and I hate to say this, Jim Comer, if you're going to go ahead and hold him in contempt, why don't you vote on it? But no, he's like, once you hesitate, that's it. You lost. So, in my opinion, Jim Comer has now lost. We have to apply maximum pressure so that he holds Hunter in contempt. Then we go over to the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and basically say, hey, if you're not willing to go ahead and order the Sergeant at Arms to go ahead and conduct that live stream swatting raid, just like was done to, I don't know, let me use some examples as precedent. Marjorie Taylor Greene, how many times has she been swatted?
Yeah, I heard
Steve
about that.
Bannon, how many times has he been swatted? Roger Stone, didn't they do a live stream raid with Criminal News Network?
CNN was there before the FBI
What
was.
about Mike Lindell when he was raided at the Hardee's parking lot? What about Peter Navarro when they conducted an assault, an armed robbery, and kidnapping of Peter Navarro at the airport? What about the other armed robbery of John Eastman in a parking lot? What about Scott Perry being burglared when they seized Congressman Scott Perry's phone? We have all the precedent we need. Why don't you grow a pair, Mr. Johnson, and let's go. Because I'm going to read it to you. Let's just read this out loud as you see it on the screen. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld Congress's inherent contempt power to fine, detain, or imprison individuals who refuse to comply with a congressional subpoena. I say again, detain or imprison. Well, how are you supposed to detain someone? Well, you're like, hey, bro, you didn't show up to your subpoena to testify, so just come and show up. No, it sounds like this. you order someone that has the political courage and the physical courage to go ahead and enforce that raid. If I were appointed and designated as the House Sergeant at Arms, I would personally lead the raid. And if it happens so be in the White House, sorry, I'm going into the White House. And then we'll try our luck with the Secret Service. But I will have the lawful authority to conduct the live stream swatting raid of Hunter Biden. Now, I'd prefer it be done out in the street because it won't be as there won't be as much collateral consequences to other folks that will try to refuse our implementation of that detention. But nonetheless, it doesn't matter. Rain, shine, sleet, or snow, I would come after him. But guess what? The required authority would have to be there. And one more thing. In Anderson v. Dunn, Supreme Court case 1821 talks about the Speaker of the House may command the Sergeant at Arms to take a non-compliant witness into custody, and that this power is essential to the fulfillment of Congress's duty. And it also applies to the Senate. Later in 1935, Supreme Court ruled Senate had the authority to require the production of papers as a necessary incident of the power of legislation, and that the Senate had the power to coerce their production by means of arrest.
There is a cell in the building. They can detain people and hold them in the building. I understand it's in the basement. Am I wrong about that?
It doesn't matter. We'll put him where he needs to be based on the discretionary authority of the House Sergeant at Arms.
Point being, he should have been arrested when he showed up.
Appointed by Kevin McCarthy. So that's something to know.
Yeah, the point being is, I believe they should have arrested him the moment he showed up in the court in that hearing.
Yeah, and I was there. I called out and said, "Hey, I'm here, ready, willing, and able. Give me authority, deputize me. Give me the proper authority. I would be honored to physically compel Hunter Biden."
Mm-hmm. So you'd said something as well about Jeffrey Epstein as it relates to Hunter Biden. Is there a connection, or were you just poking fun?
I don't know whether the connection is there or not. One of the people in my feed that was on live asked, "Hey, can you ask about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?" So I figured it would be polite to go ahead and ask that question based on one of the viewers that was in the feed.
Okay,
because I pretty much asked all the questions that I was gonna, and then as he ran off, I saw that.
Okay, so we saw leading up to this situation many times in which he was afforded an enormous amount of privilege, right? I mean, the left, by and large, they love to bitch about privilege, but when it comes to Hunter, it seems that they ignore
Chinese Communist Party privilege. Let's face it, okay? His daddy is the Chinese Communist Party's ambassador to the United States, who happens to reside in the White House, right?
Right.
So you have the resident. So he's got privilege from that, because our country is wholly taken over by China's interests, because they have their surrogate, they have their agent in place.
He's not going to act against him.
The federal executive branch is wholly captured.
It's compromised, but to the hilt, it's compromised. When the IRS tracks upwards of $30 million flowing through the coffers of 20 shell companies, and you don't sell a product, this whole
and
thing
those that aren't whistleblowers, guess what, folks? As you're listening into this show or any other show that I do, we're coming for you. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to hide and say, "Hey, we didn't know. Hey, I was just being a good little Nazi and following orders."
You're just following orders.
We treat good little Nazis like good little Nazis times 100.
Yeah.
And the list keeps building. I mean, I have a deep state target list, and it continues to grow every day as we continue the research into these guys.
Let's just talk about the last payment he received. It was a $250,000 wire that went to his dad's address. He previously stated, "I made no money off my
joint bank account." Bank account.
But doesn't that put him in trouble with the tax, the IRS once again, because he had already previously stated he made no money from the investments. So when that money came in, and he said and I quote, it's from investments. I mean, right on the spot, he snitched on himself, and once again, not being held accountable. If it were you or I, we'd be
Let
under
me
the
say
prison.
something real quick on that. I'm going to look directly in the camera. I'm going to say, hey, FBI agents that are listening and watching, I'm probably going to send it to you here once we're done with the show. You are complicit in obstructing justice and covering up for the biggest fraud and crime in American history. That goes for you as well, those on the IRS team that are doing the criminal investigation. Guess what? One of my lines of effort is identifying every single one of you. And you know what? Just like you're supposed to be investigating, you're not. The same people investigating the pipe bomb over at the DNC and the RNC are the same people probably investigating Hunter Biden's crack, the criminal syndicate. And guess what happens? This is how it's going to play out eventually. We're going to identify you, and then we're going to come after you. And you're going to say, "Oh, it's a threat." It's not a threat. Legal, morally, and ethically, we're coming after you. First, we have to identify who you are. Next, we investigate you. And guess what? We investigate you, your friends, and your family until we find something that will showcase without any doubt, with no shadow of a doubt, of your criminal activity. Because guess what? Two can play the game. And I love playing that game. So keep doing what you're doing. We're going to eventually come to you. Just like we're going to do with the DOD leadership with the Declaration of Military Accountability. We're coming for the IRS, complicit, corrupt actors. We're coming for those in the FBI, the DHS, the DOJ writ large, the DOD, the rest of the executive branch. And it's going to be a cleansing this country has not seen before, ever. Because guess what? People ask like, "Oh, you're just hyperbolic, this and that." Well, I'm gonna fill you in on something. Have you seen my deep state target list, Eddie?
No, I haven't.
How about we discuss that real quick right now, since
you
got me
let's go for it. I got you amped up
a little bit.
I got you amped up. Let's just
No,
play.
I'm not amped up yet. You're just getting me warmed up here.
Okay.
I'm about to drink the water before the appetizer, before we even get into the main course. Well, let's take a look here. The Deep State target list. The first time I aired it was on Alex Jones's InfoWars a couple weeks ago, and I think he got a little hesitant. His attorneys were like, no, don't call it that. No. Well, here's the deal. It
Alex Jones got hesitant.
List. I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I love Alex. Let's take a look at this. So, remember there were 39 people that unmasked General Flynn?
That's right. One of them was Jamie Raskin's wife.
Yeah, so you've been following along. Sarah Raskin. Well, let's go down that list, all right? I'm going to send you that list. A little quick video. Wouldn't it be nice to go ahead and take a look and see who of those 39 have a Twitter account and then look at their DMs to see who they've been communicating with? Now, from one aspect, if I am the chair of the Oversight Committee, Jim Comer, if I were the Judiciary Committee Chair, Jim Jordan, if I were the Weaponization Committee Chair, Jim Jordan, if I were the chair of the Oversight Subcommittee Committee on House Administration, Congressman Barry Loudermilk, if I were all of them in the collective, then I would be going after and trying to subpoena all of the communications and records of every single person listed here on the Deep State target list for their official government communications, right? As part of the responsibility of the Article 1 branch of government to provide oversight over the executive branch, okay? Their official communications. That's number one. If I were a private citizen, I would be FOIAing. If I were an independent journalist or any sort of journalist, I would be conducting a Freedom of Information Act request of all these scum and their names, right? Of all the digital holdings that exist. And then next up, if I were Elon Musk, Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberger, guess
Katie
what?
Hobbs is on this list, huh?
I would take a look and say, you know what? ooh, a lot of these people have a Twitter account. A lot of
Christopher
these
Steele.
people have DMs. And guess what, Elon Musk? The demand for the direct messages, which, by the way, you don't have to FOIA. These are their private communications. And technically, they're still their private communications because even though it's an official Twitter account for their official rep so-and-so, the data resides on Twitter and is owned by a private company called X now, which is owned by Elon Musk. So if Elon Musk wants to wake up and say, you know what, my terms of service today are in the interests of the public good and transparency, why don't I just go ahead and release all of their DMs? When you look at this video, up at the top, it says, for Elon Musk eyes only. These are the Twitter DMs needed to prove every single deep state conspiracy going back about 8 years or so.
I recognized quite a bit of names on there. General Clark was on there. Katie Hobbs was on there. There was a lot of names on there right now.
You know who else is on there, I think? David Buckley. You never heard of him,
No.
have you?
No. Who is David Buckley?
You heard about the 51 that provided cover for the Biden laptop?
That's right. And the letter was pre-written that they signed. Yeah.
Yeah, so 51. One of them was David Buckley. Let me contextualize good old boy David Buckley. Before that, he was the Inspector General of the Central Intelligence Agency under John Brennan, okay? That's still nothing nefarious, right? So again, the former CIA Inspector General for Brennan, who later is appointed by Benny Thompson and the J6 Cover-Up Committee, along with Nancy Pelosi, Lizzie Cheney, to be the staff director for the J6 Cover-Up Committee. Let me say this again.
Wow.
This is very important. So one of the 51 that defrauded America with a lie of a memo to convince America that the Biden laptop was not legitimate when they all knew it was, was the guy chosen to go ahead and persecute every single person that was trying to prove that the election was illegitimate.
Wow.
Cover up after escalatory cover up after cover up. And that was only one of the components. This goes back to 2014, 2016 timeframe.
It's so blatant. The list
Now, do you
changes.
see how they weaponized and why they weaponized against their political opponents? Why? Because they did and they
globalists.
can.
Globalists.
Cover up the coup.
I tie the what's going on with Liz Cheney and her being there to me is a sign. It's basically to me that's like having Bush there. These guys were all globalists. They were all globalists, and now
Bush,
you can see
Cheney, Pence.
You can see.
And here's the
Look,
name I'm going to say that you're not going to like,
what's that?
but sorry, Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner. The two, what is it, $1 billion from the Saudis, and the son-in-law of the president. Can you back that up in how? What do you got there?
Yeah, absolutely. So here, again, this is just an assessment.
I follow the truth, not people. So let's see where it leads.
So here's where we're at. Who was the COVID task force lead in the White House in March of 2020 and forward?
COVID task force. That was Pence, right?
It was Pence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if you do a little search, you can search it as we're talking. Type in shadow governor or something like that. Jared Kushner, coronavirus task force, White House task force. So between Pence and Jared, those were the two that decided on who was going to get what contract to push the emergency use authorized products. Starting with the ventilators, remember? Ventilators. And then we went to the face toilets. Face toilets. Then we went to the PCR tests, right?
All bogus, and they had the PCR test dialed up
Who
so
made
high.
the most money off of that? Who made those decisions? Jared Kushner. So I get it. Maybe he was bamboozled into thinking that this was a thing to protect America because Brian Auten over at the FBI, who was the senior intel analyst on Crossfire Hurricane to defraud the FISA court, later becomes the guy that does the whole censorship regime and scheme over at the Foreign Influence Task Force at the FBI's headquarters, who's still there to this day because Christopher Ray Epps still keeps him there to continue the cover-up after cover-up after cover-up after cover-up.
Wow. Yeah, so I just took a quick peek at several articles that yes, Jared Kushner and his shadow coronavirus unit, and it's talked about in depth.
And how he was one making decisions, right, on the contracts.
That's correct.
So now, in his defense, how do you defend that?
How
about we ask him about it in excruciating detail?
He's kind of left out of most of this conversation for the most part in the mainstream. The only time you ever hear him brought up is when liberals are trying to attack Trump, and they do it by constantly bringing up the Saudi investment. Outside of the
criminal news, let me ask you this question: when something's not covered, that's when Deep State Marauder springs into action. Okay. Now let me say this: have you heard anybody from the Criminal News Network or from MSDNC or from Faux News disparaging or questioning the decision-making of Mike Pence or Jared Kushner related to the CCP-19 task force?
Never. It
begs the question, why is that? Now, they talk about the $2 billion afterwards, right, with the Saudis, but none of them talk about the COVID policy stuff. I wonder why. Hey, Mike Pence, how about we have a discussion about that? You want to host it, Eddie?
I would love to host it.
How about we bring in Jared and we'll ask him these questions?
I would absolutely love to host it. I just don't think that most people they can't see the forest for the trees. And you got
Jared's the same guy that flubbed the whole 2020 one component of the 2020 election. He pulled back on all of the attorneys. These aren't my words.
But let me ask you a question.
These are the words of somebody that I just did an event with on Saturday in Pasadena, who happened to be the former campaign manager.
Wow. This is news right here. I'd never been told, this was never presented to me ever this way, but it is what it is. And
everyone's afraid to talk anything about Jared Kushner because of the relationship with Trump. I get it.
Not here. Like I said, this is more about the truth, and the truth, it takes you wherever it takes you. I mean,
I would say that was one of the components of this is just speculation. This part, what I'm going to say, I'm guessing that this may have had something to do with removing him and Ivanka off of the 2024 campaign.
Well, like I say, it's like this. You look at all these things, and you just indicated yourself, the press not covering part of the deep state. We call them the mockingbird media constantly. And that's not because we're trying to make a joke. It's not like an offhanded remark. It's a literal thing. We literally believe that the media is the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, like an arm of the government. That fake news title wasn't just for play. It wasn't just
faux news is the arm of the RNC, right? And Criminal News Network and MSDNC are the communications arm of the DNC. I get it. And guess what? I despise both. And it looks like we're cutting out because we started talking about Pence and Kushner.
We really need to get to a point where we have people hear me okay here? Okay.
There, you're back.
How do you go about this? How do you go about fixing this? I mean, these guys are like embedded in our government. Well, I've talked to Kyle Seraphin. I've talked to other people about the FBI. They think it's time to scrub it and start over again. I personally don't understand how we get from where we are to a place where we want to be without major upheaval. And I mean, I would welcome any kind of statement from you on that. How do we get from A to B here? What do we do?
How do we get from A to B?
Mhm.
I just go into your direct messages, pull that up, play that video, and then we'll talk about it on the flip side. You started playing that, but let's play that in full. How do we get to accountability? Well, January 1st, 4 a.m., I'm going to explain to you what's transpired since that declaration has come out, who has gotten behind it, and what's coming. We're just getting warmed up.
Okay, so here's this one.
Now, if you go back to the beginning of that, I think you missed
Yeah, absolutely.
part.
Right here.
There are a number of ways it seems it's impacted negatively our readiness. I'm not the expert on that issue, however. It's not what I wrote a book about. In fact, the mandates were rolling out at the time I separated from active duty, but got good friends and colleagues who would be perfect to testify about that issue.
So sadly, the DoD has refused to reinstate the thousands of service members kicked out of the military for rejecting the experimental COVID shot. Would reinstatement of these service members help improve the military's readiness?
Well, it's possible that it could, Congressman. The question is probably better stated whether or not any of those forced out for their decision or for the discrimination that led to their forcing out would even have any interest in coming back in. There are groups actively working at the moment to try and take action on behalf of those who either were injured or killed, their family members, or were forced out for their religious convictions or for violating their conscience to take what they consider to be an illegal, immoral, or an unethical order. And that has ripple effects today in the service. Again, I'm not the expert on that, but I'm friends with many who are, who'd be happy to testify about it.
Mr. Chairman, I want to submit for the record something called Declaration of Military Accountability, an open letter to the American people from signatories of the Declaration of Military Accountability into the record.
So entered.
Had you seen that before?
I had not seen that. I've read the Declaration of Military Accountability multiple times. I've talked to other folks who have signed it, and it's something here. I mean, like 8,400 service members were kicked out of the military, but something around 70,000 left of their own free will. Am I right?
You're looking at one of those in that second category.
That's at 70,000. Is that a real number?
Let me tell you this. So last year, what are we at now? 2022. In August 30th, I retired. Now, I put in my retirement because, well, I don't know if you saw my Tucker Carlson interview, the long one. I went in there and explained that I was selected for battalion command, right? Okay. And they said, hey, congratulations, my command. I said, you know what? I'm not taking that. Like, the reason why I'm not going to be a battalion commander is because we are currently in this moment in our country, and particularly in the DoD, where our constitutional rights and the constitutional order is being absolutely destroyed. I cannot participate in that. I'm not going to be bending a knee. I'm going to be part of that, the group of people eventually, we're seeing it, the 231, to conduct the autocorrect, to bring back the moral, ethical, and legal high ground that has been absolutely lost. Why? Because at a minimum, the entire force was duped by the same scum in the FBI, coordinating with big tech and then coordinating with big media to convince everybody that the vaccine was a vaccine 1, that it was safe and effective 2, and that it was an FDA approved product 3. All of them completely false, lies, misinformation, garbage. And I mean, again, Brian Auten. You know that name?
I don't know that
Auten,
name.
Auten, the single most criminal actor within the FBI, protected by Chris Ray Epps.
So
That's the senior intel analyst. on Crossfire Hurricane. Heard of Crossfire Hurricane?
Absolutely.
Well, it begs the question. Well, who was the senior intel analyst and who was the senior ops guy on that Crossfire Hurricane team? I'll tell you. The intel guy was Brian Otten. The ops guy was initially Joseph Pientka III. Well, let's step through their career. Where are they at since they defrauded the FISA court?
These were the guys that took the fake data into the FISA court to get the warrants.
So Brian Otten created an assessment, wrote up analysis on essentially teeing up what's called the Woods procedure. And that's why I hope someday Kyle Seraphin responds to my messages and calls and we have this conversation in depth and detail. I just don't know anybody else out there that knows the nuances of the actual process. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But at a minimum, he might know the people to reach out to specifically. I mean, I've worked my sources within government entities to essentially piece this together. But it's better when it comes from somebody like Kyle, because I think people will apply more credibility to him saying it rather than me, because people will say, well, you never worked in the FBI, this and that. I get it, whatever. So the following questions I would not ask, but these are the issues that need to be addressed. Hey, Mr. Seraphin, or whoever else is going to be a whistleblower, and those that are future whistleblowers, hopefully. Brian Otten. So he was on Crossfire Hurricane as a senior intel guy, and he basically put together a package to support the Woods file, which is the file necessary in order to bring to the FISA court judge to then obtain a FISA warrant to be able to spy on an American citizen, Carter Page.
That's right. I know
and
that.
And then the next question is, wait. So you're telling me that the original Woods file that was used to defraud the FISA court has been destroyed? Not my words. The reason why I say destroyed is because when Joseph Pientka III, the second dude that was there questioning General Flynn to get him to lie or to get him fired, according to Bill Priestap, the deputy assistant director of the FBI, along with, by the way, it was Peter Strzok and Joe Pientka.
Yeah, they ambushed him.
So then, well, here's the sequence of events. Comey tells McCabe. McCabe sends over Pientka and Strzok to interview Flynn on January 24th with the purpose, according to Bill Priestap's notes in that meeting prior to that, to get Flynn to lie or to get him fired, possibly with the coordination of Catherine Seaman, who's married to Joshua Pitcock, who is the chief of staff at the time for Mike Pence.
Wow.
Let me say this again. Catherine Seaman worked for Peter Strzok. Catherine Seaman married to Joshua Pitcock, who was at the time Mike Pence's chief of staff.
You're blowing my mind right now, brother.
Are there some questions that need to be answered?
Absolutely.
Based on those relationships?
Absolutely.
Is it possible that Catherine Seaman would have known about Rod Rosenstein's efforts to go ahead and conduct the 25th Amendment removal of Trump?
That's
Catherine
amazing.
Seaman was the vector through her husband to work that angle?
So you think the entire time, Pence was there next to Trump, he was plotting against him?
Pence was Donald Trump's handler on behalf of the deep state. He was there to control Trump. He was there to contain Trump. He was there to guide Trump in order to do what needed to be done to provide cover for the lawless activity of the spying on the Trump campaign, of the cover-up to that spying. Pence was involved in, again, this is my assessment, And I have not found a single shred of evidence inconsistent with what I'm selling you here. I've done a lot of research. So, Mike Pence, 2016, Crossfire Hurricanes launched 2 weeks after Pence is foisted on Trump, okay, as the deep state handler of Trump. And who foisted him on Trump? The RNC and the uniparty cabal, which would have been what? Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House. Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader. Reince Priebus, RNC Chair. It would have went something like this. Hey, Donald, you want a chance at getting our support for your general election against Hillary? You must take Mike Pence. If you don't, we're just going to help Hillary win. What do you choose, Donald Trump? Does he have an option?
Wow. Well, he does this time.
That's right.
He does this time. He does this time. I don't see any road that doesn't lead to a resurgence, a return to office for Donald Trump. I really don't.
So hold up. That's another conversation. Let me finish this one about, remember we talked about Brian Otten, the senior intel guy, and then the senior ops guy, which was Joseph Pientka III.
And I wanted to ask you about Brad Miller as well, but
let's step through their careers. So Brian Otten later goes where? In 2018, Christopher Ray Epps creates the Foreign Influence Task Force.
He said Christopher Ray Epps.
Yeah. I've been saying that the whole time.
Yeah,
so Christopher Ray Epps, the FBI director, creates the Foreign Influence Task Force in 2018. You can fact check everything I'm saying, you know. And so what does he do? Well, why is that created? It was because the FBI institutionalized an outfit in response to the Russia hoax to continue to perpetuate that big lie that there was a Russian interference. And so what does the Foreign Influence Task Force do? It's supposed to monitor foreign influence of our elections. But what do they do instead, Mr. Brian Otten, who's the supervisory intel analyst over there, and Laura Demlow's the head of that? Well, Brian Otten probably does something like this. Hey, Joe Pientka, remember when we were working together on Crossfire Hurricane and how we defrauded the FISA court and lied to the FISA court so we can spy on Carter Page, and that was our vector of attack to start the takedown and the resistance and the coup against Trump in that first term? Well, guess what? We need to do a little bit of censorship industrial complexing. And now that you, Joe Pientka, are over at the San Francisco field office as the number 3 dude that has jurisdiction over influencing, coercing, manipulating big tech through our old buddy who used to be the general counsel of the FBI when we were all together on Crossfire Hurricane, defrauding the FISA court and illegally spying on Carter Page. The guy that I'm referring to, the former general counsel of the FBI, is Jim Baker.
Jim Baker.
He's the number 2 attorney over at Twitter 1.0.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Joe, this is Brian. Why don't you let's get on a conference call with Jim Baker and then loop in Elvis Chan as well, since he works for you over at San Francisco field office. And why don't we just come up with this play where we're going to go ahead and make it look like that Biden laptop is a hack and dump. And since we've already had that laptop for a while, let's basically say that there's going to be a hack and dump operation, and we're going to essentially try to convince all of Twitter and the rest of big tech, to include Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, etc., that this is a hack and dump, and they need to censor it. Because guess what? We're going to label it as Russian information. And our buddies over there, John Brennan and David Buckley, whom I mentioned, and the other 49 named scum from the mostly CIA, and the 9 that are unnamed, for a total of 60, are going to sign off on the Biden criminal syndicate laptop. Has all the earmarks of a Russian information campaign. What do you think? Sound good? That way we can protect our guy. He gets to go into office and we can then finally solidify the cover-up to the initial transgression, which was the illegal spying, defrauding the FISA court, and kicking out Flynn wasn't enough. We have to continue to cover this up. Because the reason why they went after Flynn was he would have been the first person to expose all of this from the very first few days.
Yeah.
They had to remove him to protect themselves. The raid on Mar-a-Lago was just another extension of that. It was to seize the Crossfire Hurricane documents that prove everything I'm saying.
Well, when they raided his home, they violated his civil rights. I mean,
they don't care. They don't care.
And they did it. They did it to a former president. So yeah, I mean, if they don't care about doing that to him, I mean, what the hell do they care about you and I for? I mean, I mean, when you saw that the lawyer wasn't allowed to go with him room to room, and they didn't come in with. They came in with a general warrant.
Guess what?
They didn't come in and say, "I need to go."
We got the names of the agents that were there. And
every one of them,
folks. Agents. I'm not going to name you here, but we got the list. You're complicit.
Yeah.
And guess what's going to happen? That's why they're fighting so hard to take out Trump, because we're coming after every single one of them.
The judge is complicit.
Everyone.
The judge who signed that warrant is complicit.
Live stream swatted raids. And if they show some use of force against a lawful arrest, self-defense.
Which is constitutional. Now, let me ask you about something you talked about before. You called it the Department of Retribution. Department of Retribution. I love the name. First off, I love the name. Can you explain what the Department of Retribution is?
Yeah, so when we take over our levers of power, let me say this. Not when. It doesn't matter who's going to be president. It doesn't matter if we even have an election, okay? I am going to be heading up the Department of Retribution. Whether in my status now as a private citizen or whether it's going to be in some sort of official capacity, right? I just want to put that out there up front. So right now I'm the Deepstate Marauder. Then if Mike Johnson, or if he's vacated in the next few weeks for not being bold enough, whoever comes back into play, I volunteer to be the Sergeant at Arms or the General Counsel of the U.S. Capitol Police, so that from that position, I can release all the internal communications and deliberations between the Capitol Police senior leaders, such as all former chiefs of police, all ops and intel folks, and their communications with the Capitol Police Board, namely the House Sergeant at Arms, the Senate Sergeant at Arms, the Architect of the Capitol, the Speaker of the House, her family members, Kevin McCarthy and his communications, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, all of their communications, just like I'm asking Elon Musk to do with the Twitter DMs. If I'm in that position as the general counsel, I get to release all of it because I'm going to provide that advice and authority, whether it's the U.S. Capitol Police Chief.
Now,
right? And so here's what happens.
Go ahead.
That would be one vector of being Secretary of Retribution. But let's just take, for example, let's go with the traditional model, right? Most people are familiar with the traditional model. What would that take? So in order for a new department to be created, you need Congress to pass a law and the president to sign off on it. So if it's a legitimate election, on paper, in person, paper ballot one day, in person, right? And Tucker's going to continue to amplify that message to make sure that that happens for the general election.
That's exactly what should happen.
Let's just say that works. And then there's a lawful, truthful landslide that occurs, and no one's assassinated by the very individuals. So let me say this. If any presidential candidate dies in this election period, America, this is my assessment, will take a look at that deep state target list and will assume that they were the ones that were behind the political assassination
No, absolutely.
a or multiple presidential candidates. Okay. And I assess that America will immediately return that favor in kind. Leviticus style, eye for an eye. Okay.
I don't think most of them be able to walk down the street right now by themselves.
So, number two is that should there be a change in the House, in the Senate, and the White House, I think there will be a demand of not just the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think that's a bare minimum of what's being discussed. But there needs to be a Department of Retribution. Now, people are saying, well, why can't you do that from the Department of Justice or the FBI? No.
That was my question.
Because we're going to go after them.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, the first order of business is to go after anybody and everybody that ever was and currently is at the Department of Justice National Security Division. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know who you are, and I know who you are. Number two, the FBI's National Security Branch. You know who you were, are, and I know who you were and are. Okay? We're coming for you. And what does that retribution look like? Well, let's take a look at the definition for those that want to attribute something that the word retribution is not. Let's put up, I don't know, Merriam-Webster's or something. Retribution. The dispensing or receiving of punishment.
As a form of vengeance, or as a form of vengeance for a wrongful criminal act. Exactly.
What do we punish them for? Well, when we release all of their internal communications.
Treason.
Classified that are going to be declassified. Unclassified that are going to be FOIA'd. Mm-hmm. Private communications on X, formerly Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagarbage, and on and on and on. All platforms. Their phone records, their emails. Guess what? And then that's released, uncensored, on C-SPAN, on all the independent channels. Guess what happens to those folks on the deep state target list?
Go ahead.
You give me some ideas.
Well, and for me, I would have them in front of a firing squad. That's exactly what they deserve. It's treason. And treason is
I think that we take a look at the state that has the most aggressive laws on the books with the death penalty, right? Is what you're getting at.
Correct.
Because in Washington, D.C., there is no death penalty. So we would have to take it to a jurisdiction where that would be a lawful process.
But again, wouldn't they be in violation of the NDAA?
The rules of the game because of a new House and Senate and presidency, then the Oversight Committee on Congress can go ahead and pass new legislation and new rules as it applies to the District of Columbia to maybe incorporate the death penalty with a quick trial, right?
Okay,
so that's the path that these folks are begging for based on their actions over the last 8 years.
Wouldn't they be in violation of the Patriot Act, Victory Act, portions of the NDAA, all of those, basically all those bills that we all hated, but they wrote them. Why not hang them with their own legislation?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially the way that I see it. I think there's no more of a poetic justice for an outcome that comes then hanging them with the legislation that they wrote and showing them in violation of the laws they passed. So
now I want to make sure that people understand this that are listening in, the haters. I'm leveraging our own government to conduct an autocorrect. So when people say, oh, anti-government, this and that. No, I mean, we have several of our institutions that are captured, several components of it with specifically named individuals. So I love our constitutional order. I like how our system is set up. I'm only listing the specific individuals in the hundreds right now. It'll probably end up being in the thousands later, that need to be addressed because of their actions that violated our constitutional order across the board. And the evidence is abundantly clear. And it will only be clear when Elon Musk, the chairs of these committees right now this year, America FOIAs in the collective and proves everything that I'm talking about beyond, not a reasonable doubt, beyond any doubt. And then when people get motivated and we help move the Overton window to maximal punishment, kind of how things occurred in maybe years back, then you're going to start seeing a little bit of accountability.
Mm-hmm. Would you be in agreement with me in stating that those who are waiting for the revolution, you're late? It's happening right now. This is it.
Hold on. Waiting. So for those that are waiting for something to happen,
mm-hmm.
you missed out on the following.
Mm-hmm.
China, the CCP was working with the drug cartels in Mexico to murder tens of thousands of your children over the last several years. Okay?
No, yeah.
If you believe the numbers, the Wuhan lab incident, unknown if it was intentional or accidental, because China won't allow us to look, and their ambassador that's squatting in the White House will not pursue that to determine if it was intentional or not. That Wuhan lab incident, funded by Fraudchi, has murdered over 1 million Americans, if you believe their numbers.
Yeah. The NIH and the EcoHealth Alliance were complicit.
Yeah, and then the clot shot DNA mutilating death jabs, according to Mr. Weinstein, that was just on Tucker Carlson last week. 17 million people have been murdered due to the death jabs amongst the various death jab companies.
I've interviewed many people who have all had
1 million here, 17 million there. Let's count the numbers. How many people died during the Revolution, the Civil War, the World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq. If you add all those together, I don't think it comes close to the 17, 18 million. So at what point in time are you going to stop and say, you know what? Maybe these guys that I'm listening to, like Paul Ryan's Faux News that's promoting the DNA mutilation products, right? Maybe they don't have your best interest in mind.
At all.
Maybe you should consider your lot in life on whether or not you're going to be part of the autocorrect or you're going to be the collateral damage, of which they've already collaterally damaged 17, 18 plus million of you lemmings.
So I'd never been vaccinated, but my wife had to get vaccinated for work. I was against it. I tried talking her out of it. She went in and she got her second jab.
So they physically,
well, no, they didn't hold her down.
They physically restrained her.
No,
and against her will,
essentially
against her strength,
against
injected her.
They didn't inject her. She chose to do it, obviously, but they would say at will, but your job is at risk. Either do this or lose your job. This was early on. All I had was my feelings about the whole thing. And that's why I've never had the jab. However, she went deaf in her right ear after getting the shot. And because it was done under an emergency use authorization, the insurance companies won't cover the hearing aids. They won't cover the implant. They won't do anything. They say you chose to do this. Yeah. Well, At the
And
risk
if
of
she
what?
died, the insurance companies would have said she committed suicide.
It's nuts. It's nuts. And no one is being held liable. And now we've agreed to not being able to sue the insurance companies. We're not able to sue the drug manufacturers. They're essentially guarded from any, and they lied to us. Just like you said, I thought anyway, with the way they were reporting the news, that it was an FDA approved drug at a certain point. And it wasn't. It come to find out that was
They
all
never produced the FDA approved drug. They never physically produced it and distributed it.
Mara Macy explained all this in our interview as
all
well.
231 that signed on that document knew from the very get-go that this thing was complete fraud.
So I take it the H1N1 and all those were precursors, were practice before this.
Let's talk about before we go into that. I think the more important component of that is that the guy sitting in the White House is kind of triple-hatted. He's the ambassador, Chinese ambassador. He's the Ukrainian ambassador to help launder money right through Ukraine, and he's the big pharma brand ambassador, right? So all he was doing in terms of policies was essentially to go ahead and make money for these big pharma companies so that these big pharma companies could then invest into political campaigns to keep the established order in place, the Uniparty, right?
Right.
Now, there's so much to talk about here on package if we're going to talk about this one. The FDA approved something that they never produced, and the following day, the acting fake Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, put out an order saying that, hey, you must take the jab. And you can use the non-FDA approved ones, meaning the EUAs, interchangeably with the one that's FDA approved. Every single person on down the chain basically said, you know what? We're going to force and manipulate and coerce you into taking the emergency use authorized product. That's illegal. And guess what happened? This is huge breaking if you haven't seen it.
Okay.
Mr. Rutherford, congressman from Florida. Guess what he did?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to send it to you so you can put it up online. He just went ahead and finally said the quiet part out loud because he knows we're coming for him too. I don't care if you got a R behind your name or a D. You're all China first to me until you show me that you're willing to put everything on the line to stop this lawlessness from happening. So, a letter from Congressman John Rutherford, 5th District, Florida. It's a letter to Dear Lloyd Austin.
Okay, let me throw that
up. It says, I and many others, in paragraph 2, do not believe that the DOD's so-called vaccine mandate was a lawful order because it violated service members' First Amendment rights and was not lawfully implemented. Therefore, blah, blah, blah. It was never a lawful order.
So do you think all
Lloyd
those
Austin and every single person from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley, all the way down to the lowest ranking corporal or whatever that coerced someone else into the jab? Nuremberg 2.0, buddy boys.
Yeah.
All of you.
Yeah.
Some of them are listed, but those are only a couple dozen.
And what
there
a detriment.
will be thousands that we're going to go after.
What a detriment they did to our military. Essentially, all we got left are people that will follow orders blindly. Anyone who said essentially,
or
I'm
mutilated.
I'm not doing that. It's amazing. It's amazing. I've never thought that I would see the country that I grew up in with a grandfather in World War II, Korean War, surrounded by military.
It's simple.
People.
When China buys off and steals an election, right? Places their guy in the White House. That guy in the White House then appoints his surrogates as cabinet level officials to first destroy the veteran population because the Veterans Affairs Administration, I think their mandate came out even before the FDA approval. And then you have Lloyd Austin doing the same to destroy the military readiness, capability. Boom. And
So
guess what? Just like they did to us, we're going to boomerang it, baby.
you think that China is at the helm of these things?
Absolutely, yeah.
And not only did most people don't know, Christopher Wray.
I mean, what does the
also
Biden criminal syndicate get? Like, what is China getting in return for giving just free money to the Biden criminal syndicate?
Well,
you tell me.
Influence. What else? I mean, this is what Biden has known. He has no product. He has no.
But what influence?
Essentially, everything that they've done up to this point would have justified any war we would have waged against them. And yet nothing's been done. In fact, we've backed off so much from China that we say we don't support Taiwan's independence. I mean, we've completely did a 180 on people that we previously referred to as our
I've been
allies.
saying this for years, right? That when you buy off and own the guy sitting in the White House, they have the best return on investment because you get to tell your surrogate to pass and promote policies that destroy America so that China supplants America as the global hegemon. And if you're coordinating this with Russia, you're also working with Russia as China to then try to get Russia to be in the second place position if you degrade American influence in the realm of diplomacy, information, military capability, and economics.
And you're forcing them to send money into a baseless war that we're not going to win. I mean, everyone.
The whole Ukraine diversion is to increase China's power. I think the only person that got it finally, Vivek Ramaswamy. It's so frustrating. I mean, I've spent 25 years in our national security ecosystem. I taught this stuff for 3.5 years to our. I don't know how much you know about me. But the last 3 years of my career, I was an instructor at the Defense Intelligence Agency's, it's called the Joint Military Intelligence Training Center, okay? And what did I do there? It was a 7-week program that I ran, 40 hours a week. 1 week was, hey, here's the national intelligence community, all 17 members and the DNI, roles and responsibilities, missions, etc. The leadership, all the different aspects and components. I kind of know it in and out. And then I also did a 2-week course as part of that, how to become a professional intelligence analyst. Okay. So those that are writing these intel community assessments, some of them probably my students in the past. So I may know a thing or two about not only our national security ecosystem, how to be an intelligence analyst, how the global order looks, because one of the courses was the intel support to multinational operations, whether it's UN, peacekeeping, humanitarian assistance, whether it's EU missions, some of the non-US or US-led multinational operations. So I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm probably not down at the bottom either. Right?
Let me ask you for your assessment
just
on
to
that.
contextualize
Go ahead.
my background, knowledge of the global order, and applying those skills, experience, and network. I mean, imagine the people that I can interact with based on my 25 years in the system. I mean, not everybody's scum. Everybody's weak that hasn't come out yet. I get it. But a lot of them are still like honest, mostly folks that are, now that it's coming out more and more in the public domain with X, the Twitter files, CTI files, with Tucker, some of the independents getting back platformed.
Yeah.
Everybody's now reaching back out to me and like, they're not apologizing, but they feel comfortable actually communicating with me. Whereas before, like, oh, you're a tinfoil hat. I'm like, no, man.
Yeah.
All the evidence to back everything I'm saying.
Yeah, they were afraid of the perception that was being created. I tell people all the time.
By Brian Auten.
They hypnotize people because that's what the propaganda arm does.
And I'm the guy that they basically like magnifying glass on these scum.
Well, let me ask you.
We're going way over, bro.
We're good. We're
What did I
good.
say, 30 minutes?
Something like that.
We're at like 3 hours.
Let me put a bow on it with this question. We're in multiple fronts, getting ready to go to war on multiple fronts. What is your prediction for any of this stuff with China, Russia, or any of it? What do you think actually happens maybe before we ever get to an election day? Do you think it pops off or what?
So the deep state's most probable course of action is to try to do everything. Like, for example, Tuesday. A lot of people don't realize this is important. Governor Sununu is the governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu.
Yep, Chris Sununu, yep.
That's when the next electoral event happens for the Republican primary. A lot of people don't realize that the headquarters of a voting machine company that runs elections in 6 states, all of the New England states, is headquartered in New Hampshire. Okay. The relationship that the CEO of that company had with Chris Sununu's dad runs pretty deep, and by extension, the current governor. Okay. So, if you want to control the outcome of your primary, what needs to happen? Well, it's a primary that is run basically by the RNC, right? So a private company, the RNC, is going to be the entity that decides who wins and which delegates are allocated.
Mm-hmm.
The election is run by a private company, LHS. So what needs to happen? The new machines that were installed, you just tell the CEO, hey, bro, make it look like Nikki Haley won.
Well, I know
what? We won't do anything to you if you make it look like Nikki Haley wins. And the RNC ain't going to do anything either. So then who is going to create consequences if Nikki Haley wins the New Hampshire primary?
It would be us. It would be the people.
It's exposing Chris Sununu and his relationship and say, hey, Chris, prove to us you're not manipulating the outcome of the election on Tuesday. Prove it. Give us assurances and what you're doing. And oh, by the way, not only you need to have, I don't know, public statement along with Dave Scanlon, who's the Secretary of State in New Hampshire. Why don't both of you give us a briefing before Tuesday on all the mechanisms in place? And you know what? Keep every single ballot, because we're going to take a look at every single one of them.
It's not as if we don't have people that were whistleblowers all the way back to the Bush-Gore situation in Florida. Clinton Curtis went before the Oversight Committee and gave them a copy of the software. He said, we created this software. We were paid by, and I don't remember the person's name, but they were a Republican, believe it or not.
Yep, I saw that testimony. Yep.
Paid him to create a piece of software that would flip the vote 49 to 51, and then the code would eat itself so that the only way that you would know who won or lost is by using paper ballots. And that was his testimony.
Yeah, I remember that. So right now, over 75, like 82%, I think Americans don't believe the 2020 election was legit.
And nor should they. I mean, we all seen the votes flip
and growing by the minute, basically.
Yeah, and they're only defensive. Yeah, go ahead.
We were talking about the COVID con. I call it the COVID coercion and mandate molestation, right?
Sure.
Well, people fail to like all of this is so interconnected. So one of the lessons that I used to teach, it's specifically link analysis, right? Indicators and warning analysis. I mean, these are structured analytic techniques that are known within the industry. If you want to know more, I mean, you can take a course with me, I guess, or you could do read the book Intelligence Analysis or Psychology of Analysis. So Remember the censorship regime on Twitter?
Yep. Dorsey. Yeah.
Guess who was the official fact checker that was responsible for determining what's true and not on Twitter?
Shoot. Who?
Reuters, spelled Reuters.
Oh my God. He said, I'm like, I never heard of it. Oh my goodness. So
Reuters.
I often have spats with, we all have liberals in our sphere somewhere. And they love to try to pass them off as being the impartial, news source for argument's sake, to go grab, some facts out to try to substantiate the things that they say. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, wait, I haven't even gotten to the interesting part yet.
Man.
You're getting ahead of me here. Slow down, Eddie. Come on. Fast Eddie.
That's right.
So, okay. Twitter has Reuters as the official fact checker. Let's take a look. Who owns Reuters?
Let's take a look.
Take a look. Let's do it, while we're talking about it. Who's the CEO of Reuters or the chairman of the board?
Thomson Reuters.
No, the human being, the individual.
Paul Reuter. That's what it says here.
So take a look. I forgot his name. So the CEO of Reuters is also on the board of Pfizer.
It's Thomson Reuters.
That's the name of the company.
Thomson Reuters Corporation. Sorry, I apologize.
All right, so the name of the individual human being.
Looking for the individual.
He's on the board of Pfizer, the world's biggest clot shot DNA mutilation distribution company. Okay? You hearing me?
Yeah, I'm listening to you, brother.
So, if I'm going to use this as an example, if Eddie Smith is the CEO of the official fact checker for Twitter, and Eddie Smith is also on the board of Pfizer, wouldn't you want to stop all communications on Twitter that makes it sound like your product is unsafe and ineffective? Wouldn't you want to block that?
Absolutely.
Well, that's what you were doing. And guess who was running your program for you? Because, you're a CEO, you're busy. You just got to delegate it. Why don't you look her name up? And why don't you look her name up and see where she comes from? 30 years working with Gina Haspel. You know who Gina Haspel is?
Tell me, I don't know.
Former director of the CIA, who was the former chief of station in the London office.
And
they were doing
in May 21st, 2018, becoming the first woman to serve as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency on a permanent basis.
Connect all these dots, friends. Why am I the only one doing it? It's because the rest of them are complicit in covering up for them. See, they didn't plan for people like me and the 231 that signed on the dotted line for the Declaration of Military Accountability. They didn't plan for the Kyle Serafins, the Steve Friends. Guess what?
Mm-hmm.
It only takes a few of us, and in the collective, we know exactly what they did.
Now,
and we're not going to let it slide.
Do you have a big board
after me? My kids are not going to let it slide.
Do you have a big board somewhere with these folks' pictures, with pins, with strings drawn? Are you pool planning this investigation? I'm just picturing this in my head. There's only a few people in my life, Michael Rupert being one of them, just an amazing detective that can link people to people. The way you're doing here, the story that you're telling it's eye-opening. I mean, you're connecting dots across
thousands of hours. I've had a front row or second row seat to all of this.
I mean, I never would have thought to connect these dots. I mean, I thought I knew a lot. I really did. And it's just humbling being, in a conversation with someone who's just like, this person's the head of that department who knew this person. Amazing. I mean, it's freaking amazing, dude. These things that you're pointing
I spent 25 years in the system. I mean, no one else. The only person that probably knows this in a much more substantive level than I do, guess.
If I were to guess, it may be a Christopher Ray type, because they are in on it, so they obviously knows who's playing what role.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get it. The people that are involved, but I'm talking about that are observing it and kind of.
Flynn, Mike Flynn.
Flynn, that's it.
Yeah, Flynn.
So why do they attack him across all fronts?
Because they had to. He knew where the bodies were buried.
I've been under 20 investigations across the J6 committee.
So this
DOD,
is
DHS, and DOJ.
When I said to a couple of close friends who were there during J6, they were there, and I said, I'm going to be interviewing Ivan Raiklin, and one of them immediately said, why didn't they get that guy? So would you like to answer him? Why didn't they get Ivan Raiklin?
Well, that's a good question. One. Number two, why would they get me? For what?
Well, you seem to have been targeted by them, obviously. But to what end? That's my question. That's my question for you. To what end? You obviously you were involved in no criminal activity. You're exposing their criminal activity. So what is their angle to try to come after you? What angle?
I'm going to tell you my best analysis on this. So I was at the Ellipse, right? I was a VIP. I didn't know this, but it was Roger Stone that invited me to be at the Ellipse. I found out later because I asked a few of folks that I knew that were close to the planning of that event. And I said, hey, can you get me VIP access? And I wasn't sure who did it, but I was told that I had it. I think you get an email or something. And so I went. And then it's freezing, by the way. I don't know if you were there, but I was over at the Ellipse. Took a day off from my day job. And then as the things kind of settled down at the Ellipse, I started make my way down Pennsylvania Avenue. Well, I've been standing there for a while, since 10 in the morning. So I really had to use the bathroom. So luckily, by God's grace, I had to go take a piss. And so I went down to the Holiday, and you know what? I should probably pull the CCTV footage from that Holiday Inn on that day to prove everything I'm saying. It's like 3rd Street. I'll have to take a look. A couple of blocks south of the Capitol.
Yeah, I know it well. I grew up in Baltimore City, so I know the city well.
Okay. So the reason why they would want to come after me is obviously very high because I'm very vocal. I'm exposing all of their scumbaggery, right? I get it. But the thing is that
you're the most brazen of the bunch who is trying to expose them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You are the most outspoken, the chest out, ready to go.
Absolutely.
Talk loud and carry an even bigger stick. That guy. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to talk to.
I think this is their calculus, right? I mean, if you put the enemy hat on, did they investigate me? Yes. Did they mention my name at the 3rd hearing, Pete Aguilar, of the 3rd of the 10 hearings because of a tweet that I put out that Trump retweeted? Yes. I mean, why? When people ask me why didn't they come after me, let me tell you what they've done to me. 20 investigations. I was blocked from. They put me on the Quiet Skies program where they conducted 4th Amendment rape on me for 21 months. I think that's like an AI thing when you put your thumbs up, that little bubble.
I don't know how that happened. I've never seen it.
It's an AI thing. So they put me on the Quiet Skies program. They violated my 4th and 5th Amendment in that process. They blocked me from going onto military bases to be able to have access to my health care, my VA, the commissary, PX, MWR. As a reserve lieutenant colonel, I was not allowed to go onto base because I was considered, I guess, a domestic terrorist. What else? My contract job where I was teaching, they blocked me from actually performing on my contract. So in essence, the federal government told the contract company that you can no longer teach because you cannot enter the building and the facility to teach, which was a local determination
Yeah.
by the security officer. Here's how I think that happened. Benny Thompson, right?
Yeah. Benny's
The
awesome.
J6 cover-up committee sends a memo to DHS Mayorkas. And they start to put everybody that they want to target on the Quiet Skies program, Quad S, and then the TIDE database. It's like the terrorism database within the government. They put me on that list. So my investigation is started in June of 2021 by DHS. In August of 2021, they placed me on the Quiet Skies program. Basically a couple days after the cyber symposium, or the day after the cyber symposium, is when the DHS comes out with their terrorism threat bulletin saying that if you think that the election was illegitimate, you're a potential domestic terrorist. If you think if you don't like face toilets and the COVID BS, then you're a potential domestic terrorist. And then if you want to celebrate Christmas and then remember 9/11, you're a potential domestic terrorist. Well, I fit in all three of those categories, and I was not only fitting into those categories, I was leading the effort to prove everything that the government was putting out to be false, and that it was, and it still is, an illegitimate and lawless 2020 election that needs to be remedied, right? And I only increased my velocity and content to push it back. So their motivation to come after me was high. But here's the problem. When you are just a line officer investigating me at the FBI, at the DHS, at DOD, the Army Criminal Investigation Division, etc., you're using investigatory tools, right, and starting to research me. I love that because I know I'm clean. They don't know I'm clean. So in the process of them investigating me, guess what? I find out who's investigating me because I know people in the system. So what does Ivan Raiklin do?
You start investigating the investigator.
Investigate them. And then when I find dirt on every single one of the individuals, you're now stuck in a dilemma. Imagine, Eddie Smith, you represent those that are investigating me.
Mm-hmm.
You're being told and ordered, hey, find some dirt on Ivan Raiklin so that we can go after him. So that's one aspect. You're trying to keep your job. The other aspect is, Ivan knows I'm investigating him. He's now not only investigating me, but my neighbors and my family members and everybody that I'm associated with.
Reminds me of Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick, this happened to him way back when the FBI started looking at him for computer hacking, and he hacked the FBI that was tracking him and turned his credit cards off, turned off his electricity. He investigated the investigator.
So if you know you have some transgressions in your life that I'm talking about, and I publicly air them saying, hey, America, let's look into Brian Auten. Let's look into Bill Priestap's nephew who works at a certain element of the Department of Defense that is investigating me. Does that change the calculus on how aggressive you're going to be at coming after me?
Absolutely. It changes the entire trajectory.
Because now you have to...
I may at this point make it look like I'm doing my job, but I'm not.
You're going to make it look like your job in order to avoid pain from above, and then in order to avoid me putting you at the top of my investigatory list, you might actually conduct a lawful investigation. And so what does that lawful investigation look like? Well, come 2023 in January, February, when we took over the House and the TSA administrator testifies for the first time, and it's publicly available for Ivan Raiklin to show up and breathe down the neck about 4 feet away, sitting from the TSA administrator, David Pekoski. I was like, David, Administrator Pekoski, my name's Ivan Raiklin. I have been on your little Quiet Skies Quad S list since August of 2021. You mind taking me off of that? You will know as well as I do that is a political and attempted intimidation hatchet job. You want me to take you off of my list of people to investigate? You want me to stop working with the chair of the Homeland Security Committee to ensure pain, political pain to you and your organization? All I ask for is to go ahead and remove me off of your political target list.
Is Quiet Skies program still active right now? I know it received a ton of criticism
yeah,
because we don't. My understanding is they don't have air marshals to actually be on the airplanes now because they're too busy following everyone around.
So that's what we're going to get into when we talked about earlier is the impeachment of Mayorkas, and we'll close with this.
Okay.
So the TSA falls under the DHS, under Mayorkas. So the TSA administrator was appointed by Trump, right? Reconfirmed, I think it's a 5-year term, by the current belligerent occupant, the Chinese ambassador, right? So in that conversation, I said, hey, man, you know why I'm on that list. Like it's political. So why don't you politically take me off? And it went something like this. Well, can't take you off, but if you I'm like, he recommended that I go and do a redress. I'm like, if I do redress, I'm basically acknowledging that what you did was lawful and legitimate. I'm not going to concede. There was no legal lawful predicate to put me on the Quiet Skies program in order to be going through this Fourth Amendment rape process from the get-go.
Right.
And he said, you know what? Maybe your TSA a high priority individual on the deep state target list because he helped alleviate the problem. But it doesn't still alleviate the problem for the thousands of other people that are on the Quiet Skies program. So this leads to the impeachment of Mayorkas. Congressman Green, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. I saw him earlier today before I marauded Dan Goldman, who's also on that committee, in the hallway that you played earlier.
Yeah.
So, Chairman Green, one of your articles of impeachment must be the DHS's fraud, waste, and abuse and misuse and misallocation of resources that are used to violate the Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights of thousands of Americans. Okay? Particularly in my situation, when they placed me on that Quiet Skies program along with others. How did that work? Benny Thompson sends over a memo. You can pull that up. And then he basically authorizes and requests Mayorkas to go ahead and harass, target, surveil unlawfully, physically surveil with 3 federal air marshals from my home where I'm sitting to the airport where the TSA conducts Fourth Amendment rape. And then when I pass security, those same federal air marshals, potentially the same, maybe others, then continue to surveil me inside of the airport. And then they fly with me. And then we land at the destination. And then they have the authority to surveil me to my destination, whether it be hotel, meeting, etc.
So
Quiet Skies program.
And so which clip did you want me to play here? The mark my words at Rep Dan Goldman clip? Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, let's play that. And then since we're on a roll, I'm going to send you one more and then we'll be done.
Sure. There we go.
It's dragging out.
But you know what? You kept the interest of everyone. We continued to grow the live, and it's exactly where it was when we started. So that tells you a lot. People are hungry for what you're saying. The things that you're saying, a lot of people don't know. And we spend a lot of time reading the news. We spend a lot of time studying and going over this. And the things that you're saying right now, most people don't know, including me. And it's very hard to catch me. And I'm not being conceited, but it's very hard to catch me off, not ready. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for most of the things that you were saying.
So, does that make sense of why they haven't gone after me? Is because I've leveraged my relationships to apply the necessary pressure. Almost nobody has that, right? And then I've been leveraged the members of Congress right now, especially since January 2023, to maximally expose these scum. And so while they want to go after me, the chief of the Capitol Police, I'm sure, would love to do something to me on behalf of Pelosi and Schumer. But I don't know. They haven't seized me.
Let's take a look. So that's great. And this is one of the guys that during the hearing yesterday, or the other day rather, to continue to basically state there was no evidence, just pisses me off. But you know what? I'm glad that they say it, because the moment that they say there's no evidence, I already know who they are. It's like wearing a mask. I used to hate the fact that people wore masks, but now I like it, because now I can see who you are. I know what you think. I know what you believe. And I just noticed you're clear. These people that say no evidence, every one of them should be a target, because they're being willfully ignorant to the fact, to even the phone calls that were leaked from Biden's phone calls, where he indicts himself in the phone calls.
So speaking of, do you know that I served on the Ukraine crisis team in the Pentagon at the National Military Command Center in 2014?
I do not, but I do now.
It's all this Biden crap. It's like 10 years in the making. It's frustrating.
Well, from my understanding, there are 40 different FBI informants that were there for 15 years. The FBI had Biden dead to rights a long time ago, but instead of locking him up, pursuing charges, whatever, they decided to use him and blackmail him. That was a report given by Jesse Waters. Now, I don't
trust that guy, because he's still over at Faux News, so he's scum to me.
And that's really what it boils down to. I don't know the substance behind it. I know it's a bold statement to make.
No, that may be true. Because he's at a private company that was complicit in destroying our constitutional rights. They are the enemy. Any single person that is an employee at that outlet is an enemy of mine. Now, since we're talking about Faux News and them being an employee, let me send you something that is very on point. It's the long form interaction that I had with Dan Goldman. And it's a tweet that I put out earlier today that says, listen closely as Speaker Ryan's Faux News producer, Tyler Olson, 1791, tries to prop up Rep. Dan Goldman to cover for the impeachment of Ali Mayorkas. There's going to be a massive boomerang, folks. You see it?
Yeah, I have it right here.
Yeah, there's no remotely high crime or misdemeanor here. This is simply a policy dispute.
So, Mr. Goldman, you talked about the due process in there. What about Eric Ciaramello in facing your accuser for the Trump impeachment, sir?
Right now, as we we speak in negotiating
How does it comport
bipartisan
with that,
group of
sir?
senators to tackle the issues at the border. The White House and the Biden
You talked about
administration
due
with
process.
Secretary
You're familiar with the
Mayorkas
Fifth Amendment,
has
right?
tried to implement a number.
How come when you
of
were an
new
impeachment
policies
manager,
that the Republicans are
you
actually
didn't make that point
combating,
as it applies
trying
to President Trump's
file
impeachment
lawsuits to prevent
when you
them
went ahead and
from
didn't even
actually
mention Eric
executing
Charamella's
their
name? You
policies.
defended
So,
Eric Charamella.
It is.
You defended
I understand they may
Eric
Republicans may
Charamella's
disagree with
boss,
how the
John
White
Brennan.
House and the administration
Also, you
is,
defended his
trying
two
to
attorneys,
address what
Mark
is
Zaid
a
and Andrew
new and
Bacaj, right?
significant influx of migration at the border. But
What do you
that
say
is not
about
grounds
that?
for impeachment. What this committee should be doing is working with the Senate and Secretary Mayorkas right now to pass legislation which is required to actually change policy at the border. The administration cannot do it alone. So this is a sham hearing. It's a sham impeachment investigation. You can see it because they're not providing the necessary due process that any impeachment hearing
Necessary
has
due
always
process, similar to what you did with
provided
facing your accuser,
in
right?
the
What about Eric
historical
Charamella,
context
sir?
of the Congress. So it's
Can I get a question in, sir?
That Secretary
My name's
Mayorkas
Ivan
has
Raiklin.
been successful in his job given the state of the border right now?
I think it's very hard to measure what success is. I think he is doing his. I think that the administration has been doing as much as they can under the current law. And there's no question that the situation at the border is a problem. There are a number of
It's a massive
factors
problem.
into that, right?
Meanwhile,
there are
you and Benny
governments that are
Thompson talked to
cratering in the
DHS
Central
Secretary to go ahead and
America,
beef
South
up the Quiet
America.
Skies program
There's climate
to go
migration.
after your
There's all
political
sorts of
opponents
reasons why people
rather
are
than
trying
focusing
to
on the
come
border.
here. We
Why
need
is that?
legislation to address that issue. And the problem is that the Republicans are not interested in actually addressing the problems. They're more interested in political theater, which is what we have going on right here.
Political theater, kind of like you and Benny Thompson do, by sending memos to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary to beef up the Quiet Skies program, Mr. Goldman? Can you address that? Is that due process to put folks without legal predicate on a Fourth Amendment rape program known as the Quiet Skies program against your political opponents? There's going to be a massive boomerang, sir, and you're going to be one of the targets of that boomerang.
Yeah, for some
It's
reason,
coming.
your audio on the videos, they don't come out on the stream.
Amazing, brother. You have balls of steel, bro. You know what? I would love to be in a position. I would love to go with you to the Capitol as you do this. I would love to be there. I would love to take part.
Did you see the one that I did with Nancy Pelosi?
I have not.
I mean, this is like a daily thing for me. They just run. Nancy Pelosi was literally in a dead sprint. Meanwhile, she was protected by her security. Like, I don't care. I'm just going to make sounds that they completely pierce their narrative in a way that just destroys their narrative.
Ivan, I hope you have security, brother. We need to protect you at all costs.
I don't need security.
Oh, man.
I'll tell you this. When Christopher Ray Epps testifies before Congress,
yeah,
I walk up, you can tell the posture changes. He quadruples his security detail when I'm in his proximity.
Yeah, he's definitely an employee of the CCP. $9 million a year prior to being made the director. This tapestry and where the threads go through it, and just
tapestry.
it's crazy to me that you can put these pieces together the way that you do. Do you know what
I remember? I taught analysts to professionally do what I'm basically doing as it applies to them. So,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely. Do you have political aspirations outside of this later? I mean, I know you ran previously.
I'm running for Secretary of Retribution. That's all I care about.
That's all you care about.
I want to be the stick, the hammer, because no one has the courage to do it, right? Look at what they did to us. No one on our side has the courage. We need to drop the hammer on all of them.
Yeah, I've asked the same question.
Like the last few years, all I've been doing, I'm going to close with this. The Secretary of Retribution, should that Department of Retribution be created, then first order of business, you've probably heard this. I'm hiring every single J6 defendant and their family members to be on the research team, okay? And then every single person that was thrown out of the military or left that is a operator due to the illegal jab mandate, guess what? They are going to be hired in the action arm division to make sure that those that we research, all right,
yeah,
actually face the live stream swatting raid. But we got to be able to live stream that. So that's the third branch or division of the Department of Retribution, where every single independent platform that I've ever done an interview on, you're going to be getting notifications of where and when to be to live stream the Roger Stone style raid on Name the Individual on my deep state target list.
There's quite a few.
And that's just the start. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
You know,
I had defendants were there.
I had an entire list of
How
questions.
much political persecution has there been?
And you mashed them. You answered all these questions without even realize you answered them. So a lot of them, they just sat here. But brother, I really do appreciate you taking the time out.
You got to remember, folks,
and take part in this. It was really awesome that you did that. Go ahead. You have anything else you want to leave with?
Leviticus chapter 24, verse 19-20. If anyone injures his neighbor as he has done, it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever injury he has given a person shall be given to him.
Mm-hmm.
Luke 17. It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones. Those going after our kids, trying to mutilate them, guess what, folks? How about you start with yourselves? Those school boards that want to mutilate our children, I recommend to you to look in the mirror and lead by example and mutilate yourselves, starting with your neck. And then once you see the success rate of that, then we will consider whether or not you should be promulgating that to our children. I suspect your success rate will be 0 after you fully mutilate your neck. Okay?
Well, guys, really do appreciate Ivan taking the time to come and talk with us. You know, you don't hear this a lot, but you're a man after my own heart. You're a take action guy who doesn't just tell people what to do, and you're not an armchair memer. You're out there in the trenches and you're doing it. And you have no idea how badly somebody like me just wants to be right there with you in the trenches.
Why don't you do it? Where do you live?
I'm in Vegas. So I'm in Vegas, and yes, I do everything that I can within my realm of capability here. I'm very involved in my community.
Harbor City from you?
Pretty far. Carson City is Carson City is way up north. I'll be going there next week as well. And I am involved here locally and volunteered actually this time around.
Yeah, why don't you join forces with what's her name? Oof. You know what I'm talking about.
What's her name?
She lives in Vegas.
Vegas.
Mindy Robinson, I think.
Mindy Robinson lives in Vegas?
Yeah.
I know like the Hodge twins live here. I don't know any. Let's see.
You don't know Mindy?
Yeah, I know who she is. I don't know if she lives here.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, you know, Eddie keeps to himself sometimes a little too much. I will reach out if there are people here that I can definitely align myself with, and we can do some good. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. And for those of you watching who don't know, we do have, and I produce the only all Native American podcast from a conservative perspective called Skin in the Game. Check that out as well. We're doing good things.
I
Ivan,
got to let you know one point.
Yes, sir.
I was kind of looking in on my Twitter feed, and every time you played a clip, I don't think the audio came out. So
the audio didn't come out when the clips played.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That sucks. All right, we got to do it again. No, you know, I will fix that next time. For those watching, I do apologize. And I do know what the fix is, so we will get that worked out. Ivan, any last things you want to say before we get out of here, brother?
When the institutions we support and make our living at turn on us and want to steal our life, body parts, liberty, and money, pursuit of happiness, we must fight back. We must fight against tyranny and injustice in the doctor's office, in our schools, in state and federal institutions. By name, date, time, place, and transgression. Call them out.
Absolutely.
Shine maximum light on them. Trillions of lumens.
So, as usual, the silent majority, you need to stop being silent and stand your ground. We'll see you next time on the Patriots Prayer. You guys have a great day.
My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flag.